Hello there. Let us continue solving questions on iteration statements. And in this video, we're going to solve these four questions from the symmetry subcategory of the nested loop patterns category. Now, if you have watched my previous video, you must be wondering that why am I taking these four questions again? Because these are the exact same questions that we solved in the last video. Well, to answer your question, I'm taking up these four questions again because of the way we approached and solved these questions. What I mean is, if we take this pattern, for example, the way we had solved this was using two questions that we have solved already, which is this and this. So what we did over there was we took the approach from those two questions, then we modified them a little bit to reach the solution to this question. And we did the same thing for these three questions also. Now that is fine because it worked. But what if you have a question that you want to solve, but you have not solved any other question that resembles the question that you are trying to solve? In that case, you'll have to think of the solution from scratch, right? Which is what I'm going to cover in this video. For these four questions, we are going to think of solutions from scratch. Also, as the name says, symmetry, and as you can see, all of these patterns that we have over here are symmetrical. We're going to use that to our advantage. How? We will get to know in some time. So let's get started with the first question from the list. So this is what we are supposed to print for n equal to 5. Now, like I said, this belongs to the symmetry subcategory. And we have put this in symmetry subcategory because this pattern is symmetrical about this line, right? So if we take this line into consideration, we have divided the pattern in two parts. And these two parts are the mirror images of one another, right? So let us discuss a solution to this, keeping all of this in mind. Now, like I said, we can draw a line over here, which would then divide this pattern into two parts. So the way we are going to solve this is we're going to figure out a solution of the first part, right? Then we also have to figure out a solution of this part. And let's call it second part. Although we have drawn a line over here to divide the pattern in two parts, we'll also have to take care of this, right? Because this also is part of the pattern. So we've got these two parts. Then we have this part as well, and let's call it the third part. So what we are going to do is we're going to figure out a solution of the first part. Now, since the first part and the third part are the mirror images of one another, we will figure out how to use the solution of this to get this. So the first thing that we will have to do is figure out a solution of the first part. So let me quickly draw the first part separately, and then we will continue with the discussion. So this is the first part, right? Now, how are we going to figure out a solution to this? We're going to do the same thing that we have been doing so far, which is draw a grid around this, then have some rows, have some columns, number the rows, number the columns, and then try to find a relation between the row number, the column number, and what we are supposed to print. So let me quickly draw a grid around this. All right, so this is how it is going to look like. Now, we know that I, which is a variable we have put over here, is going to take care of each row, and then j is going to take care of each column, right? So now let's try to find a relation between the row number, the column number, and what we are supposed to print. So in the first row, that is when I is 0, you're supposed to print 1 asterisk. Then in the second row, when I is 1, we're supposed to print 2 asterisk. Third row, when I is 2, 3 asterisk. And fourth row, when I is 3, 4 asterisk, right? So the relation is pretty simple over here. The number of asterisks that we are printing in any given row is one more than the value of I for that row, right? So can we say this? Can we say A is equal to I plus 1, where this A is the number of asterisks we are printing in that row? We can, right? So this will give us the asterisk count. Now, this means, give me a second, that A will be 1 over here, 2 over here, 3 over here, and 4 over here, right? So let's say we are on this row. We are on the row where the value of I is 2. There we need to print 3 asterisk. So all we will have to do is run a loop 3 times, and we know how to do that. We can go from 0 to 3, actually less than 3, right? So we'll go for 0, 1, and 2, which will give us 3 iterations, and in each of the iteration we're going to print an asterisk, right? Also, you must have noticed that I'm going a little fast in this video compared to the last video or the videos before that. The reason is these are the patterns that we have solved already. And even if we have not solved the pattern already, even if we have not solved this pattern already, we have solved a lot of patterns. So I'm assuming that by now you're comfortable with patterns and with loops and finding a relation between the value of I, j, and what we're supposed to print. So with that said, let's continue. And we were discussing that this is how we can print this pattern, right? So if we write the pseudocode for this, how would it look like? It would look like this. We will have a loop, say with a variable I, which will start from 0, and this is going to go till some value. Now what that value would be? Well, over here we have got 4 rows. So if we start from 0, we have to stop at 3, right? Now this 3 is not a random number. This 3 is coming from this pattern, which is something we are trying to print, right? And this is the third row. This is where we will stop. And the reason we are stopping at 3 is because the value of n is 5. If the value of n was 6, we would have stopped at 4. And this second part that you see would have been at a point where I is equal to 5, right? So if n is 5, this second part will be at 4, which means the previous part would end at 3. Similarly, if n was 6, this second part would have been at 5, which means the previous part would have ended at 4, right? So that is how it will go, which means that for n equal to 5, we have to stop at 3, which is n minus 2, right? So we'll say I is equal to 0, I less than equal to n minus 2, and I plus plus. So since n is 5, this is going to be 5 minus 2, which is 3. So we are going from 0 all the way up to 3. Or what we can do instead is, we can say I less than n minus 1. In that case, this will be 4. So we are going from 0 all the way up to 3, right? Because this is less than 4. So either way, this is how the outer loop would be. Now, what are we supposed to do here is we're supposed to count the number of asterisks that we are supposed to print, which is I plus 1. Then we'll say for j equal to 0, j less than AC, j plus plus, right? And over here, all we will do is print an asterisk, then a println statement, and then that is it. So this loop will take care of printing this pattern, right? So over here for I is equal to say 2, AC will be 3, and we are going from 0 to 3. So 0, 1, 2, and actually from 0 to 2. So 3 asterisks. So for I is equal to 2, we'll print 3 asterisks, which is what we need. So assuming that this is understood, let's write this part of the code in IntelliJ, and then let's continue from there. So here we have SRC, then we have iteration statement, then questions, then nested loop patterns, and we have symmetry. So what are we going to do here is we're going to create a new Java class and call this as Q1 solution 2, because we already have Q1. This is something we wrote in the last video. So let's continue and have a main method, then a variable say n initialized to 5. And we are going to take care of the first part. So we'll say first part in the comment, and then we'll continue and say for int I equal to 0, I less than, like we had discussed, n minus 1 or less than equal to n minus 2, and I plus plus. Then over here, we'll count the number of asterisks. So asterisk count is equal to I plus 1. Then we'll have another loop. We'll say j equal to 0, j less than asterisk count, j plus plus. And here we'll have system.out.print. We'll print an asterisk, then an empty println. That is all. So if I run the code, this is what we get, which is the first part of the pattern that we are trying to print, right? So now let's move on to the second part. And for that, let's come back here. So over here, we have handled the first part. Now we have to handle the second part. And like I was discussing earlier, because n is equal to 5, this will be at I equal to 4, right? And because n equal to 5, this will have 5 asterisk. If n was 6, this would have 6 asterisk, right? So second part is pretty simple. It is just a single line with some number of asterisk, and that number can be determined from the value of n, right? So all that we will have to do is we will have to iterate n number of times, and we will have to print these many asterisk. So the solution to the second part is pretty simple. So I'm not writing it over there. We will straight go to IntelliJ and we'll write the code for the second part. So we'll say second part, and over here, like we discussed, we'll have a loop which will go for n number of times, where n is this variable that we have declared over here. Now we'll have system.out.print and we'll print an asterisk. And of course, we'll have to move the cursor to the next line. So with this done, if I run the code, see, this is what we have, which is the first and the second part of the pattern that we're trying to print. Now we'll move on to the third part, which is this. And for that, let's come back over here. So like I was saying, the third part over here is the mirror image of the first part. And like I also said, we will try to figure out a solution of the first part and use that to print the third part. But before I do that, let me clear this a little bit so that we have got enough space to write whatever we need to. So, like I was saying, the third part is the mirror image of the first part, and we already know how to print the first part, right? So all we have to do is figure out how to, in a way, reverse it. As in the first part, as you can see, we started from having 1 asterisk in the first row all the way up to 4 asterisk in the fourth row. If we reverse it, we will start from 4 asterisk in the first row, which is what we need over here, all the way up to 1 asterisk in the last row, which is what we need, right? Now, if I map this part with the discussion we had over here, what would we get is, we would get that this thing, that is I being 3 and number of asterisk being printed being 4, should be in the first row, correct? As you can see, we have got 4 asterisk over here, which maps to this. So if we want to get 4 asterisk, and if we want to use the same code that we had discussed over here, for that, the value of I will have to be 3, because according to the discussion we had, asterisk count is just I plus 1. Similarly, if we take the second row from the third part, we've got 3 asterisk, and 3 asterisk over here is when I is 2. So this will become the second row. Similarly, this will become the third, and this will become the fourth, right? So all that we will have to do is, we will have to ensure that I starts from 3 in this loop, and I goes all the way up to 0 in this loop. If we ensure that the internal part, that is the asterisk count calculation and the inner for loop, can remain the same, right? Now what I mean is, see, if I is 3, asterisk count will be 4, because asterisk count is I plus 1. Now if asterisk count is 4, this loop will be able to print 4 asterisk, right? Which is what we need over here. Similarly, if I is 2, asterisk count will be 3, and this loop will be able to print 3 asterisk, then 2 asterisk, and then 1 asterisk, right? So which means this is what we will have, correct? So instead of starting from 0 and going all the way up to 3, we would start from 3 and go all the way up to 0, right? So all that we will have to do is change all these 3, right? To do that, what we can do is, over here we discussed 2 conditions. One condition is I less than n minus 1, and the other condition would have been I less than equal to n minus 2. And if we use n minus 2, we will get 3, right? So can we say this? Can we say that I is equal to n minus 2, which means since n is 5, I will be 3, and I is greater than equal to 0, because what we want is we want to go from 3 all the way up to 0, right? Then we will say I minus minus because we want the value to decrement in every iteration, right? So with just this change made and the rest of the loop being the same, we will be able to print this part of the pattern. So assuming that this is understood, let's come back to IntelliJ. And what am I going to do is I'm going to copy this entirely. Then I'm going to paste it here, change the comment to say third part, and I'm going to replace this. I'm going to say I equal to n minus 2 and I greater than equal to 0, and we're going to say I minus minus, and the inner part remains the same. That is, the code inside the for loop will remain the same. So with this change done, let me run the code to see if we get the output we need or not. And we do. See, we've got the first part, which was there from this part of the code. We've got the second part, which is from this part of the code. And finally, we have the third part, which is from this part of the code. So we have solved the first question successfully. And with that, let's move on to the next question, which is this. So for n equal to 5, this is what we are supposed to print. And now you would have figured out yourself as to how are we going to handle this, right? We're going to handle this way. We're going to have a line over here, which will make this pattern divide in two parts. And the first part is this, which is symmetrical to the third part, right? So what are we going to do is we're going to first of all figure out a solution to this. This is pretty simple, and we'll use a solution of this to handle this part, right? So let me quickly, first of all, draw this part separately so that we can continue the discussion. So this is the first part of the pattern that we are trying to print, right? So let's focus our attention over here and try to figure out a solution of this part. So as you can see in each row, and by the way, each row will be handled by I and each column will be handled by J. So as you can see in each row, what do we have is we have got a few spaces in the beginning, and then we have some asterisk. And the same thing holds for every row. For the second row, for example, we have got two spaces in the beginning, and then we have got two asterisks separated by a space. We'll get to this part, that is asterisk being separated by a space in some time. In the third row, we have got one space in the beginning and then three asterisks. In the fourth row, we have got no spaces in the beginning and we have got four asterisks, right? So for any row, let's say first row where I is 0, what we have to do is we have to print three asterisks first, right? And then we have to print, sorry, three spaces first. I meant three spaces, not three asterisks. Three spaces first, and then we have to print one asterisk. Then when I is 1, we have to print two spaces first, right? And two asterisks. When I is 2, one space, three asterisks. When I is 3, zero space and four asterisks in total, right? So the next part is pretty simple. It is figuring out a relation between I and S and figuring out a relation between I and A, combining those and writing the code to get to get this part printed. So let's first of all focus our attention to I and S. So over here, as you can see, if we compare I and S and if we try to find a relation between them, what you would observe is adding the value of I with the corresponding value of S is giving us 3, right? So can we say that I plus S is equal to 3? We can, right? Now this 3 over here is not a random number, of course. This 3 over here is because we have got a total of 4 rows. And in the last row, we have got 0 space, which means in the previous row, we will have 1 space. And then in the row before that, we'll have 2 spaces, and the row before that, which also happens to be the first row for this pattern, we will have 3 spaces in total, right? So again, because there are 4 rows in total and the last row has got 0 space, the first row will have 3 space, right? Now, the next question is, why do we have 4 rows over here? Well, we have 4 rows over here because n is equal to 5, right? Because n is 5, we have got first row, second row, third row, and the fourth row. And fifth row is the one which is dividing this pattern in 2 parts where both of the parts are symmetrical. So if n was 6 instead, for example, we would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we would have a row over here with 6 asterisk, which would have divided this entire pattern in 2 parts, which means we would have a total of 5 rows if n was 6, right? So concluding, because n is equal to 5, we have got 4 rows over here, right? Which means if n is 6, we would have got 6 rows over here, and that is how it would have proceeded. So taking n is equal to 5, we have 4 rows. And because we are starting rows with 0, we have got 3 over here, right? So if n is equal to 5, the row number for this row would be n minus 2. So over here, this 3 is actually just n minus 2. Now, we are trying to find out the number of space that we have to print in any given row. So if we make S as a subject, can we say n minus 2 minus I will be the number of space given a particular value of n and a particular value of I? We can, right? So let me note this down over here. So it is n minus 2 minus I. So we're done with finding a relation between the row number and the number of space that we will print in that row. Now on to the next part, which is finding a relation between the row number and the number of asterisks that we are printing in that row. It is pretty simple. As you can see, for I0, we have A1. For I1, we have A2, I2, A3, and I3, A4. So the relation would be just I plus 1, right? Now the next part of the puzzle, which is having spaces between these asterisks. And this is pretty simple to handle. So for that, let me take this, for example. So over here, we have got 3 asterisks and all of them are separated by a space. So now I've got 2 ways in which I can handle this. One way is this. We print an asterisk, then we print a space, then we print another asterisk, then another space, then another asterisk, right? Now, what this will do is, this will give us 3 asterisks and 2 spaces, which is exactly what we need. The other way is printing an asterisk and a space together. So what am I actually doing is, I'm combining these two, print an asterisk and a space together. So we'll print an asterisk and a space that will take care of this part. Then we'll have another asterisk and a space, which will take care of this part. And if we go that way, that is print an asterisk and a space, at the end we will have this, which is actually this part, right? So following the second approach, which is this, we ended up with an extra space. But is that a problem? No, right? Because even if we have an extra space at the end, it is not going to change the way our pattern looks. Also, this is relatively easier, right? It is easier because we are supposed to print 3 asterisks. And what we have done is, we have printed 3 groups where each group will have an asterisk and a space. And that is keeping the same pattern. That is, there's no change in the pattern that will get printed. Whereas if we go this way, we'll have to ensure that we are printing an asterisk, then a space, then asterisk, and then a space, and then asterisk. And we're not printing a space. I mean, we are not printing a space after the last asterisk. That is, we are not doing something like this. But even if we do that, the pattern remains unchanged. So why not group them? Why not do this, right? So with all of this discussed, and also let me note this thing down over here. With all of this discussed, now we can write the pseudocode for the first part. And for that, let me make some space over here. So what we will need is, we'll need a for loop, of course. So we'll say for I equal to 0, and you already know the condition. It will be I less than n minus 1, and then I plus plus. Now over here, the first thing we have to do is print a few spaces. So we'll calculate the space count, which is n minus 2 minus I. we'll have a loop over here, which will iterate for space count number of times, and we'll print one space in every iteration, right? Once we are done with that, we will then calculate the asterisk count, which is I plus 1. And again, we'll have a loop over here, which would print the required number of asterisks. But here, we'll not print an asterisk only. What we will do is, we will print an asterisk, leave a space, right? So this is the rough pseudocode to print this pattern. Now, assuming this is clear, let's go to IntelliJ and let me create a new Java class. Let's call it Q2 solution 2. And over here, let's have a main method, then a variable, say n initialized to 5. Then what are we going to do is, we're going to print the first part. And we know for that, we'll need a loop, which will start from 0, go all the way up to n minus 2. That is why I less than n minus 1, then I plus plus. Then over here, the first thing we have to do is handle the spaces, right? So we'll say int space count, and we know the relation for that, which was n minus 2 minus I. Now we have space count. We can start a loop. Say we'll have a variable j starting from 0, going all the way up to space count minus 1. So j is 0, j less than space count, j plus plus. Over here, we'll print a space. Then we'll have asterisk. We'll say asterisk count is equal to I plus 1. And let's copy this and paste it here. And we will say j0, j less than asterisk count, j plus plus. And over here, we are going to print an asterisk and a space. And after this is done, we'll just have a println statement, right? So if we run this code, this is what we get, which is the first part of this pattern, right? The next thing we are going to do is handle the second part. So for that, let me come back over here. And this is the second part. And this is pretty simple. All we have is 5 asterisks separated by spaces, right? So over here, what we will need to do is we'll need to print these 5 asterisks, which is the same as the value of n, right? So let's come back to IntelliJ, and over here, let's handle the second part also. So second part will be this. We'll have for int I is equal to 0, I less than n, and I just realized I made a mistake in the first part. We'll get to that, but let me just complete the second part. So in the second part, we have to print an asterisk and a space. Now, if I run the code, you'd see that mistake that I was talking about. See, what happened is we have got 5 asterisks over here, but what should have happened is, this 5 asterisk should have been here, and it is starting from the right place. But these 4 asterisks should have started one space after, right? So how it should have been is, we should have left one space over here, then 2 over here, right? Then 3 over here, and we should have left 4 spaces over here. So let's see how can we handle that. And for that, let's come back over here. Now, according to whatever we had discussed, we were leaving 3 spaces here, then 2, and then 1, and over here 0, right? Let me quickly write this down over here. So number of spaces we actually left are 3, 2, 1, and 0, right? This is say SA, S actual. And the number of spaces we expected to leave was 4, 3, 2, and 1, right? Because like we had just seen, we would have to leave one space over here, 2 here, 3 here, and 4 here. Now, the relation between the spaces actually left and the spaces we should have left is just 1 more than the spaces we actually left, right? So if we change this calculation and add 1 to this, we would be able to leave the required number of space. I am assuming that this is understood. If not, let me repeat myself. So in the discussion that we had over here, we left 3 spaces in the first row, right? Then 2 spaces, then 1, and then 0. But according to our discussion, what we should have done is, see, we should have left 1 space over here, 2 over here, 3 over here, and 4 over here, which is what is captured here. See, in the first row, 4 spaces, second row 3 spaces, third row 2 spaces, last row 1 space. So now if you find a relation between this, that is SE and SA, it is pretty simple. SE is just SA plus 1, which means whatever space we actually left, if we increase that by 1, we would be able to get the number of spaces we should have left, right? And the number of space we actually left is this. All we have to do is add 1 to it to get this, right? So coming back to IntelliJ, what am I going to do is I am going to update this to say n minus 2 minus 1 plus 1. Now I know this can be simplified, but let's just go for plus 1 on the basis of whatever we have discussed. Run the code and check if it is actually working or not. So it is, right? Which means this is perfectly fine. Now we can simplify this. We can say instead of n minus 2 minus I plus 1, we can just say n minus 1 minus I, because that is what minus 2 plus 1 will be. So if I run the code again, the test cases, the code is printing the correct output, which is the first and the second part of this pattern. Now, for the third part of this pattern, you tell me what we should be doing. Well, on the basis of discussion that we had for the first question, what we did was we just, in a way, reversed the iteration of the outer loop, right? So if I come back over here and take a look at Q1 solution 2, see, we are going from 0 to n minus 1. Here, we went from n minus 2 all the way up to 0. And the reason we did that was because the third part is symmetrical to the first part. And that same thing holds for the second question also. See, the first part and the third parts are symmetrical, right? So in that case, what am I going to do next is come back to IntelliJ and I'm going to grab the code for the first part. And I'm going to paste it over here, update the comment to say third part. And over here, instead of going from 0 to 3, I'll go from 3. So we'll say I is equal to n minus 2. And we'll go all the way up to 0. And we will decrement this in every iteration. That is all that we will have to change. And if I run the code now, we expect this pattern to be printed. So let's run the code and check. And there's a mistake again. So this is pretty obvious. What happened is after we printed 5 asterisk, it is printing 4 asterisk in that same line. And that is happening because after we handled the second part, we did not shift the cursor to the next line. So with this change done, it should work fine, and it did, right? So this code solved the second question. Now let's move on to the third question. All right, so for n equal to 5, this is what we're supposed to print. And this time the pattern is slightly different. Different not just in the first part, in what we are printing in the first and the second part. Difference in the sense that if we draw a line that divides this pattern into 2 parts, that line does not pass through a row which has got a few asterisks, right? Which means that there won't be any second part over here like we had in this one. So we had first part, then second part, and then third part, right? Over here, we'll just have the first and the second part to handle, which means if we are able to figure out the solution of the first part, it will be pretty simple to print the solution of this part, right? So let's get to work and let's try to figure out a solution of the first part. All right, so let's take a look at this pattern. And what are we doing over here is we have got 5 rows in total and 5 because the value of n is 5, right? So we've got 5 rows in total. And what are we doing in each row is this. So for I is equal to 0, we are first of all leaving a few spaces. How many? 4. Then we are printing a few asterisks. How many? 1. Then when I is 1, we are leaving 3 spaces. And we are printing 3 asterisks. I2, we are leaving 2 spaces, printing 5 asterisks. I3, we are leaving 1 space, printing 7 asterisk. I4, we are leaving 0 spaces and printing 9 asterisk. Now you already know what to do, right? We need to find a relation between I and S, and we also need to find a relation between I and A, correct? Now, let's find a relation between I and S first, which is pretty simple. If you see, if you add them up, you end up with 4. So we can say that I plus S is equal to 4, and this 4 is nothing but n minus 1, right? So S is simple. S is n minus 1 minus I. So we'll write S over here, n minus 1 minus I, correct? That is how we'll get the number of spaces to be left in any given row for a particular value of n. Now, if we take a look at I and A, this is a little different from the last question. So what we have got is, for I0, we've got 1, and I1, we've got 3, I2, 5, 3, 7, and 4, 9. So if you take a look at just the values of I, you will see that these are continuous odd numbers, right? Now, if these are continuous odd numbers, what you could do is, you could write it this way. Can you say that 1 is just 2 multiplied by 0 plus 1? This is one way of writing, right? Or the other way could have been 2 multiplied by 1 minus 1, right? Either of them works. So let me write both of them actually, because as of now, I don't have a strong reason to prefer one over the other. So the two ways in which we can write 1 is this: 2 multiplied by 0 plus 1, or we can say 2 multiplied by 1 minus 1. Similarly, for 3, this would be 2 multiplied by 1 plus 1, or 2 multiplied by 2 minus 1. And let me quickly fill this up for 5, 7, and 9. All right, so this is how it will look like, which means what we have got is, we have got 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9, and we have written it in a different way, which is multiplying 2 with some number and adding 1, or multiplying 2 with some number and subtracting 1. Now, what we were actually trying to do was, we were trying to relate I and A. So let me also put I over here. So I is 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? Now, if we take the values of I, this is what we would need, which would give us the total number of asterisks in that particular row, right? We can represent that in either of these ways. So no matter what way you choose, the step forward is pretty simple. If you go for this, what you would have to do is, for I equal to 0, you would have to say 2 into 0 plus 1. For I equal to 1, you would have to say 2 into 1 plus 1, and so on. So if you take a look at this, you would get 2 multiplied by some number, right, plus 1. This is the format in which this is written, correct? We are multiplying 2 with some number and we are adding 1 ultimately. Now that number is 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, which is the same as the value of I. So we can say 2 into I plus 1. Similarly, if you take a look at this, we have got 2 multiplied by some number minus 1, right? And those numbers are 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, for I being 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4 respectively, which means whatever we have got over here is just 1 more than the value of I, right? So can we say 2 multiplied by I plus 1 minus 1? We can, right? So taking I, if we go for either of these expressions, we would be able to get the number of asterisks that we are supposed to print in that row, correct? So what am I going to do is, I'm going to go ahead with 2 multiplied by I plus 1. You can go with any of these, but I prefer 2 into I plus 1. So let me put 2 into I plus 1 over here, right? So this will give us spaces and also asterisk to print in each row. And from there, there's just one thing that we are left to do. We are left to have a loop which would iterate for 5 times. And in each iteration, calculate the number of spaces, number of asterisks, then print those number of spaces and those number of asterisks to get this pattern. So instead of writing the pseudocode, let's go straight to IntelliJ and let's write the code for this. So first of all, I'm going to create a new Java class. I will call this Q3 solution2. And here we'll have a main method, then n, which is equal to 5. And what am I going to do is write the code for the first part. So I'll say for int I is 0, I less than n, I plus plus. Then first of all, calculate the number of spaces. So we'll say int space count, and on the basis of whatever we had discussed, the space count would be n minus 1 minus I. So we'll say space count is equal to n minus 1 minus I. And we'll have another loop inside. So we'll say int j is equal to 0, j is less than space count, j plus plus. And we'll say session.out.print and a space, right? Then we'll say asterisk. So for that, we're going to go for a variable and we will call it asterisk count. And like we had discussed, there are two ways in which we can go about it. We can either say 2 into I plus 1, or we can say 2 into I plus 1 and then minus 1, right? So let's go for 2 into I plus 1 for now, and then I'll also update this for the other expression, and we will see if that expression is also working fine or not. So we'll say 2 into I plus 1. Then let me grab the for loop from here and paste it here. Let's replace space count with asterisk count, and let's replace printing space with printing an asterisk, right? Now, after this is done, we'll need an empty println statement. So if I run the code, this is what we are getting, which is the first part of the pattern that we expect to print, right? So let's come back to IntelliJ, and what am I going to do now is I'm going to copy this and comment it out. I'm going to paste it over here, and instead of saying 2 into I plus 1, I'm going to say 2 into I plus 1 minus 1, right? Which is the other expression that we had discussed. So let's run the code to check if we get the same output, and we do. So either this expression or this expression, both are fine, right? Let me comment this out and uncomment this. And let me just cut the expression from here, delete this and put it here. All right, so this is the first part. Now for the second part, let's just copy all of this, paste here, update the comment to say second part, and instead of going from 0 to n, let's start from n minus 1 and go all the way up to 0 and decrement the value of I in every iteration. So if we run the code, this is what we get, and this is exactly what we had expected, right? So with this, we have solved the third question. Now moving on to the fourth question from the list. So for n equal to 5, this is what we are supposed to print, right? What we'll do next is we will draw a line which would split this pattern in two parts. And those two parts are these, right? And as you know, these two parts are symmetrical to one another. So we're going to find a solution of the first part and use that to find the solution of the third part, right? The second part is pretty simple. So let's get to work and let's find the solution of the first part. All right, so this is the first part. And over here, we have got I to take care of rows and J to take care of columns. Now let's take a look at what we are doing in each row. So in the first row, that is when I is 0, we are printing a few asterisks, right? How many? 5. And there's also some space, actually one space between every asterisk. That is, we are printing an asterisk, then a space, then asterisk, then space, and that's how we are going, right? And we can handle that. We already know how to handle that. So let's not get there. Let's just focus on the fact that when I is 0, we are printing 5 asterisks. Then when I is 1, what are we doing is we're first of all leaving some spaces, and then we are printing a few asterisks. So when I is 1, we are leaving 2 spaces and we are printing 4 asterisks. Now when I is 0, how many spaces did we leave? None. So we'll put 0 over here. Similarly, when I is 2, we are leaving 4 spaces. So 4 spaces and 3 asterisk. When I is 3, we are leaving 6 spaces and we are printing 2 asterisk. And you already know what to go on from, where to go on from here, right? You need to find a relation between I and S, and you need to find a relation between I and A, and put those relation in a loop and be done with it. So that is how we'll be able to solve the first part, right? So let's get started and let's find a relation between I and S. And for that, let me quickly copy it and paste it here. So take a look at I and S, and the relation would be pretty easy to figure out. The number of spaces that we have is just 2 times the value of I, right? See, I is 0, number of spaces is 0. I is 1, number of space 2. I 2, 4, 3, 6, right? So for the number of spaces, all we will have to do is this. So let me remove this from here. Now let's focus our attention to I and A, and let me quickly write the values of I and the corresponding values of A separately. So take a look at this. If you observe, you would notice that when you add I and A, you end up with 5. See, 0 plus 5, then 1 plus 4, then 2 plus 3, and then 3 plus 2. So can we say that I plus A is equal to 5? We can, right? And this 5 is not a random number. We know it by now. This is 5 over here, as in we're printing 5 asterisk in the first row. That is when I is 0, because n is equal to 5. If n was 6, we would have printed 6 asterisk in the first row, right? So row number 0 would have 6 asterisk, 1 would have 5, 2 would have 4, and so on. So we can replace this 5 with n, and that will give us A equal to n minus I. So number of asterisks is equal to n minus I. Now we have taken care of number of spaces and number of asterisks. What is left over here is to take care of the spaces that we are leaving after every asterisk, and that is pretty simple to handle. We have discussed that already. All we will have to do is print an asterisk and a space together, right? So with these in place, we can now write the code to solve the first part. For that, let's come to IntelliJ and let's create a new Java class. Let's call it Q4, and Q4 already has 2 classes called solution 1 and 2 respectively. So we'll say solution 3. And here we'll have public static void main int n equal to 5, and we'll write the code for the first part. So for that, we'll have a loop, and this loop is going to start from 0 and it is going to go all the way up to n minus 1, because we need a total of 4 rows, right? And then I plus plus. Inside the loop, the first thing we will do is calculate the number of spaces that we need. And we know that it is 2 multiplied by I. So we'll say int j equal to 0, j is less than space count, j plus plus, and we are going to print 1 space in every iteration. Now, once this is done, we have to then go for asterisk. So let me grab this. Let me change space count to asterisk count. Let me also copy the variable name and change space count to asterisk count in this loop. Now over here, what we will have to do is we'll have to print an asterisk. Do we have to print just an asterisk? No, we have to print an asterisk followed by a space, right? So with this in place, let's run the code to check what do we get. Well, get all of that in one single line. And this also doesn't look very right to me. Anyway, let's first of all put system.out.println over here. And we have got this. Okay, so the mistake is over here. What we did was we said int asterisk count is equal to 2 into I, and we know that is not the case, right? That expression is for space count. So what we need over here is this. We need n minus I, right? And now this looks perfectly fine. So this is the first part of the pattern that we are trying to print. The second part, as you can see, is pretty simple. All we have to do is we have to print one asterisk. But that is not just an asterisk that is getting printed. We also have a few spaces left over here, right? So let us come back over here and discuss how can we handle the second part. So for the second part, if you see, we're leaving a space over here, and then this space is there already. So two spaces, then three spaces, then over here 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So we'll have to leave 8 spaces first and then print just one asterisk. Now, this 8 spaces can be related to the value of n that we have. We have got 8 spaces because n is equal to 5. If the value of n was 6, we would have got 10 spaces. You can try this out. Draw this pattern for n equal to 6 and count the number of spaces we have over here. So, because we have got 8 spaces for n equal to 5, can we write this? Can we say that the number of spaces is 2 into n minus 1? We can, right? N is 5 and 5 minus 1 is 4. 4 into 2 is 8. So that is how we'll get the number of spaces to leave over here before we print a single asterisk to take care of the second part, right? So coming back to IntelliJ, let's have second part over here, and we are going to say for int I equal to 0, we'll need to calculate the space count, right? So we'll say int space count is equal to 2 multiplied by n minus 1. So we'll say int I 0, I is less than space count, I plus plus, right? And we'll leave some spaces over here, and then we'll print one asterisk, and then we'll need to move the cursor to the next line. So with this done, and this can be written better, but let's just keep this and let's run the code to check the output. And this is the output, which looks perfectly fine, right? So like I was saying, this can be written better, right? What I meant was we've got these two print statements. In the first print statement, what are we doing is we're printing an asterisk, and in the second print statement, we are moving the cursor to the next line. Now, instead of having these two print statements, can we say this? Can we get rid of this and write println over here? So if we write system.out.println and then we have an asterisk, what it is going to do is it is going to first of all print an asterisk and then move the cursor to the next line. The same thing that those two print statements were doing together, right? So we're done with the second part also. Now on to the third part, and it is very simple to handle. So what are we going to do is grab the for loop of the first part, paste it here, and it is giving an error. This error is because we have declared a variable called space count here, which is in the main method. So this space count will be available from this point until the end of the main method, which also includes this for loop, right? Now, because the space count variable is available in this for loop also, there's a conflict over here. The conflict is that we are declaring a variable with the same name again, right? So what is the solution to that? Solution is to either rename this or get rid of this variable. Either works. So to keep it simple, so that I don't have to think of a new name and I don't have to keep the name consistent across the code, what am I going to do is I'm going to grab this expression, get rid of the space count variable in the second part, and I'm just going to paste that expression over here. Problem solved. So now what we have to do next is, instead of going from 0 to n minus 2, we have to start from n minus 2 and we have to go all the way up to 0, right? So if I run the code now, this is what we get, which is exactly what we had expected. So this solves the fourth question which we had planned on solving today. So with this, we have completed the solution of all of these four questions, and this has been handled differently compared to the previous video in the sense that we did not rely on finding which question we have solved already, which can be used to print this pattern. What we instead did was we started discussing the solution from scratch, and we also took advantage of the fact that all of these four patterns are symmetrical. And because these four patterns were symmetrical, we were able to find the solution of the first part and use that to find the solution of the third part. All that we had to do over here was reverse the way in which the loop was running. That is, if it was running from 0 to 3, reverse it to make it run from 3 to 0 and keep everything inside the loop exactly the same. So this is how we solved these four questions. And with this, we come to the end of the video. I hope I've been able to teach you something new and useful. And if you've got any suggestions, feedback, or queries, feel free to put them in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one, where we will continue this symmetry subcategory and solve the next few questions. So see you in the next one.